Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first rendition of Sowing Seeds, what to do, what not to do in residency interviews. My name is Esther, and with me we have Dr. Colbert Nelson here today. So just a little introduction about Dr. Nelson. Dr. Nelson is a current assistant professor in the Department of Family and Preventative Medicine, as well as sports medicine at the University of Oklahoma Family Science Health Science Center and OU Health. He is from Little Rock, Arkansas, and went to medical school at William Carey University College of Osteopathic Medicine, and is an alumni of both the University of Missouri Family and Community Medicine Residency and Sports Medicine Fellowship. His interests include sports medicine, exercise and nutrition, ultrasound, education and mentorship, ambulatory and inpatient medicine. Currently, he's involved with sports coverage of various levels, teaching medical learners, growing his own skills and clinic, and mentorship. In his spare time, he likes to relax with his wife Raven, their two children, and dog Bishop. Thank you, Dr. Nelson, for coming today and being a part of this panel. How are you this
Yeah,
evening?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So, Dr. Nelson is no stranger to sowing seeds. So, Dr. Nelson will just kind of go through a series of questions, kind of talking about your residency interview journey and maybe some advice that you have for current applicants. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, first question. Can you tell us a little bit about your path to residency and what your interview season was like?
I always knew I wanted to do family medicine. I had a couple of other specialties kind of catch my attention, like OB and physical medicine and rehab, but was really focused on family medicine. So, a lot of my CV, my personal statements, all that resume, building up were all leaning toward family medicine, and then had some leadership things. Um, I was the last class of medical students interviewing who like had to do them all in person. So it was like right before COVID hit. So I drove everywhere. I got interviews at. So it would be like driving to uh, South Carolina and then going back to like Memphis and then, hopping to Missouri, all that kind of stuff. So everything was in person then. Um, and yeah, just, having to dress up, try to put your best foot forward for, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, go to a dinner the night before, hope people like you, and then keep it moving. And now I've been lucky enough. I was a chief resident, um, so I sat on residency interviews on the other side, fellowship interviews when I was a fellow, and now I'm doing helping with both residency and fellowship interviews this year.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I do understand that some residency programs are slowly transitioning back to in person. So I think you'll kind of have a good perspective to talk from both the applicant side and from the interviewer side. So, my next question for you is looking back, what do you wish you had known before starting residency interviews? Kind of being on the interviewer side. Is there anything you wish you knew as an interviewee?
Oh man, but I wish I knew. Maybe like if I could have had more confidence, I wouldn't have applied to as many places and wasted as much money as I
Hmm.
did. The application process can get pretty expensive. And, for those who are going to be applying to those very, very highly competitive um, residencies, you want to apply to every place you can. Um, but, I think it's one thing to think that, it's another thing to kind of go through it and be on the other end. Um, so just kind of having that perspective and then not getting down if I thought I would hear back from a place and they never like contacted me, that kind of
Hmm.
thing. So just be more confident too.
Okay. Okay. And were there any memorable interviews, either good or bad, that taught you something valuable? And if so, what was it?
Yeah, there were a lot of good interviews. Well, one other thing I'll say that I guess I wish I knew, I kind of learned it as I went, but just be prepared to interact with everyone. So, like, when you are on an interview, if you're on the Zoom, like everyone you see and talk to is going to be like a part of that process. Same thing when you're in person. I know for me personally, when I was a chief, there was a interaction with a applicant and a staff member, and that staff member like spoke up and said what happened, and we did not rank that applicant. Even though the interactions with everyone else were fine, you know, that happened. So they were knocked out of the running.
Hmm.
Um, so I did just want to add that. Can you go back to the actual question I'm supposed to answer?
Yes. The question was, were there any memorable interviews, either good or bad, that taught you something valuable?
I would say man, I'll be honest, this sounds corny, but I would say like every interview taught me something valuable. I ended up matching at my number one place. And so when I would see places before I interviewed at my number one, I had questions or maybe reservations. And then for me, seeing the ones that were kind of like the top of my list, those top 3 to 5, like night and day difference in terms of how I felt and how things appeared to me. But I wouldn't have felt as comfortable with those bigger interviews if I didn't go through potentially like smaller ones that also would be a good opportunity.
Hmm.
Um, so, I'm not saying that you need to like only interview somewhere to get practice, but if there's a place you're genuinely interested in, um, give them a shot. Because I mean, there were some that I was completely surprised and moved them up my rank list, or other ones that I was disappointed and moved them down my rank list.
Hmm.
And you just don't get that unless you put yourself out there and really commit to just being the best person you can that day.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for the anecdote as well. It definitely sounds like, regardless of who you interact with on the interview trail, it's important to treat that as an interview because you never know kind of what sort of power they hold or how they can influence where the program ranks you. So that's definitely good to know. Thank you for sharing that.
I would also
Um,
say, since things are going back to more in person, please be on your P's and Q's for like dinners or meet and greets at like a restaurant. Like, do not drink too much, do not act crazy. Like, that has come up and that has happened. Don't be that person who gets disqualified because you decided to have a little too much fun or got a little too friendly or you weren't professional. Like, from the time you appear to whatever event is first, like, you got to be on it.
yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. Next question I have for you is, how did you prepare for your interviews and what strategies did you think was best?
So I would say I personally don't think I prepared much in terms of like practice interviews.
Okay.
Um, I just kind of knew what my story was and knew what I wanted and knew what my strengths and weaknesses were. And I just focused on that and felt pretty comfortable like talking about it. Um, that's basically what it comes down to is, can you talk about yourself in a way that makes other people feel like they could spend the next 3 to 7 years with you? Like, yes or no? That's really what it comes down to. but not all, I also would say I would write down questions that I would ask the faculty or staff. And I would make sure that there were certain questions I would ask certain people, or I would do my research on their website the night or two before the interview. And, I'm not saying go and suck up to everybody, but like for me, I have a background in public health. So if I saw somebody on the faculty list who had a master's in public health or something like that, I would make a mention of it if I interviewed with them. Or
Mhm,
I obviously have a sports medicine interest. That's something I was looking for, so I made sure to mention that. Or, you know, like I never left out of my comfort zone of who I was, but I also made sure to like find those little opportunities that I could really like jump out and make myself stand out.
mhm. So essentially, kind of doing your due diligence, doing research on kind of the faculty and who you'll come across and see if there are any sort of like similarities or ways you can kind of break the ice, if you will.
Yeah, and make sure that you don't like BS it. Um, if you think if there's like a big time place that has like a research component, you want to go there for research, you don't have a lot of research, don't talk to the like head of the research stuff about like something you don't understand, because that's going to end bad for you. um,
Mhm.
you don't want to talk yourself out of a spot just as much as you want to talk yourself into one.
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. And I know you mentioned you didn't practice too much your responses. Do you think that do you feel as though you wish you would have, which also goes into the next question, which is, are there any things that you didn't do during preparation that you later realized that you should have?
So going back to kind of my process, I interviewed at every place that I interviewed. I initially would be like okay with going, but I knew going into it there were some places that I just naturally would be more excited to attend without knowing any detail beforehand. So, I was somewhat strategic with when I interviewed where. So there were definitely a few interviews that might be a little bit more lower on my list, or they might not be as nerve wracking as ones that might be later on. So I can practice, you know, my question. I can practice my frame of reference. I can really work on that question of why do you want to be here? Um, so I can kind of fine tune it. I would say um, looking back, I guess I probably would have talked to other applicants to see what they did or didn't do. I pretty much just kind of relied on uh, myself and my genuine like ability to hopefully come across and talk to people. Um, and yeah, probably should have done more work like actually preparing. But for the people out there who are a little bit more stilted in conversation, it would be a good idea to practice more. I didn't think that was my issue, so I didn't worry about that. Versus other people who might have a very easy time talking, you want to make sure you stay on topic or you don't
Mhm.
get too far off topic. So having little things or reminders that you can kind of think of to bring you back in is helpful. And I probably had a few of those too.
Okay. And you kind of touched on this in your response, but my question to you is, how do you strike a balance between preparing strong answers while also staying genuine as you're responding to those questions? And also sounding more conversational as opposed to robotic.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably like one of the toughest things. because everybody know, or most people should know, if you're applying to a specialty, you should be able to say why you want to do that specialty.
Mhm.
But it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to like talk about it like you see yourself doing it. So, instead of talking about it from maybe like I'm over here and they're over there and I see this, like I like the ER because the ER is exciting and it's fast and I can think on my feet. That's fine. Or you could try to do or speak to something maybe on an ER rotation that really drew you in, or a personal experience that really like kind of spoke to you. You're not rehashing your personal statement, but you are trying to like speak to them in a way that says like, I want this because of who I am and like how I see myself fitting, not just I want it because it sounds fun.
Mhm. Thank you for your response in that. I definitely feel like both in the medical school interview process and residency interview process and all the other interviews that you will have in life, it's very difficult to kind of strike that balance to, be prepared, but also not sound super robotic and overly rehearsed. So it's
Yeah.
definitely tough. Um,
Another thing I would say is generally have some way to give yourself a break or a pause before you
mm,
answer. So don't just jump into an answer. You want to, you want to be thoughtful, but you also want to appear thoughtful. So, you may have prepared for 3 weeks and you have all your questions for, or your answers for any question, and you immediately answer after every question versus you take a breath, you count to two in your head, and then you say that same thing. Like that will calm you as the interviewee, will give you a little bit of time to like focus your mind, make sure you're going to hit the points you want to hit. But
mhm,
also on the other side of things, as a interviewer, it's showing me that they're actually like, they thought about my question. They're taking the time to be thoughtful in their response. It's not just a rehearsed pitch. Um, Throwing in little details about, things, or trying to tie it in and make all of your answers like personal, or to show different qualities, is also going to be like beneficial to you. Um, like what's one of the typical ones they do? Like name a talk to me about a time you had a difficult like interaction and what you did to like address it. So of course you can really like destroy somebody and say how they were like stupid, and they didn't know what they were talking about. um and you can frame it in a way that it sounds exactly like that, which is not going to be what I would want to see at a program I'm working at. Or you could have that same exact scenario play out, but you can speak about it in a way that um, you were like surprised with how it went, and you thought that you prepared adequately, you learned something from it, all that kind of stuff. So you want to always try to like weave in positives with the negatives, and with whatever answer you're trying to give.
mhm. Definitely. Thank you for that. I feel like that's also kind of a tough question to, like you said, not necessarily bash the person, but explain your side of things and while also coming across as professional.
Yeah.
um, so thank you for that. In your opinion, what are some behaviors or habits that help you make a good impression on your residency interview trail? Or what are some things that you've seen in applicants on the interviewer side that you thought made a good impression on you?
um I would say number one, like look good, feel good. So, you don't want to, I'm not saying you need to wear like a tux or your wedding dress to interview, but you want to make sure that you feel like you put the effort forward in your presentation. So obviously my beard is scraggly, but I would definitely shape it up, pull my hair back. Um, for an interview, wear a suit and tie if I'm a guy. There's a lot of other appropriate things you could wear, but it's definitely a different vibe seeing an applicant who has a suit that matches with a button-down shirt and a, I don't know, strong colored tie, like red or blue, instead of maybe like somebody who has a checkered shirt and might have like a sports jacket and khaki pants on. Like it just sends a different message, at least to me. Um, for I mean, also just thinking of a couple things I've seen over time, like chapstick, lotion, little, like those little things. Like I remember seeing somebody on an interview through Zoom, and like I was distracted by their lack of adequate lubrication of their lips, or just chapped lips. So I focused on that, and that's what I thought of. And other people also kind of caught that, like the first thing that came out of our mouths when we were talking about that applicant was that negative. So you don't want to give somebody a negative thing to talk about. You want to try to put your best foot forward. And then, like I said, if you look good, you're probably going to feel good. If like, hey, this is my like go-to suit, this is my go-to tie, I'm gonna kill it. This is my go-to like set of pumps. Like, go for it. That's just gonna make you feel even better and more confident in your answers, and that shows. Being nervous is expected, but it's one thing to have a nervous confidence. It's another thing to stumble over every word or
Mhm,
um, mutter an answer or talk so fast that nobody can really understand or follow you. So just figure out whatever way you can be the most comfortable and genuine. And I mean, for the most part, everything else will take care of itself.
mhm. Thank you for that. I think the theme of tonight, kind of what you've said at the beginning, and kind of now that we're halfway, you've said it again, is confidence and just making sure that you are your most confident self, whether it be on Zoom or in person. So thank you for that.
Exactly. And that's the same thing all the way through: medical student, resident, fellow, attending. Like, that's been a very consistent thing I've seen over
Mhm,
my journey, at least.
mhm. Yeah, thank you for that. So it's not just in this current season, right? It's kind of throughout your lifetime and
Yeah.
whatever sort of job that you're seeking or applying for, just being confident.
Yeah. And also, I wasn't the perfect student. If you have things on your application that you're like worried about or stressing about, like they can see everything. Like I can see like every single thing that somebody's basically done if it's been recorded in their
Mhm,
application. So if once you put that information on there and you're required to put that information on there, please don't lie on any of that, because that's also an easy way to be DNR, or do not rank. Um, that's it's just well known information. So what if you do get an interview after your application is out there? They saw that and they still want to talk to you. So then it becomes like a, how can you sell yourself? How can you talk up yourself?
mhm,
Highlighting obviously like what you're great at, but also like the things that you did struggle with. Because
mhm,
I mean, I guarantee you, like everybody who goes through the journey of medicine, for the most part, some people are probably just gifted, um, have more than a few struggles. So, I mean, just don't beat yourself up too much.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I really appreciate those words of wisdom. And kind of along those same lines, in residency interviews, how do you talk about those things? How do you talk about, we're kind of getting into failures, which is another sowing seeds topic, but like, how do you navigate the conversation if an interviewer asks you about a failure of step one or failing a
Mhm,
shelf exam or what have you? How do
mhm.
you navigate that and ultimately turn it into more of a positive as opposed to a negative?
Yeah, that's, everybody's a little bit different. I chose to like address it head on, but I would not, I didn't bring it up unless it was prompted. So I'm not going to be like, hi, I'm, Colbert Nelson. I'm interested in your program, and I like failed my shelf exam for surgery. Like I'm not going to give you that information. But if it comes up in a question, what's your biggest failure? What's something that you look back on during your medical school career, what you could do differently, all that kind of stuff, then that's when I think it's appropriate to say. So for me, I will just use my exact thing that I'm pretty sure I said. So way back in the day, you had to do a in-person clinical examination with 12 standardized patients, and you either pass or you fail. And my strength, I thought, and the feedback I got was that I'm clinically hands on, talking to people fine. Um, but I ended up getting a fail on the first one, and then I passed the second one. And obviously, you're beating yourself up. You're trying to figure out what happened. I've with reflection, I feel like I knew what happened. And so I just owned up to it, when it came up. Tell me about one of your biggest failures, Colbert. Oh, well, you can see on my application when I took my clinical skills examination, I failed it the first time. Um, I prepared and I felt like I was in a good place before I took it. Um, and it surprised me that I did fail it. I was able to reflect on um, the cases that were there, and I figured out that when it came to the lung exam, I didn't listen to all of the standardized lung fields, and that is the one thing that I can think of that would really lean toward me not doing well. So I made sure to refocus, go through my exam skills from head to toe, like I didn't know what I was really doing, so I could feel more confident, and then take that exam again, knowing that I would pass. Um, and so I passed. I would end it differently. But basically saying like you put in the work, things didn't go the way you wanted. You had to figure out what you did wrong, address it, and then you know, retake the test or redo the project or whatever the case may be. And so, somebody's looking at your application before you say that, they see, oh, he had to take so and so test twice. Um, they might have a completely different understanding or thought about you after you give that explanation of, they can look at it and see like, oh, he did really well on all of his clinical things, and all of his feedback is really, high. He sounded like he was very honest and upfront with what he did, in terms of overlooking like a very small thing. He accepted that. He, refocused, didn't let that get him down, and prepared even more than the first time and took it again and passed it. So he has, you can pick out a lot of different adjectives like resilience and determination and
Definitely.
confidence and all that, all those fun words that you want to try to be. But yeah, that's definitely one that I personally did during my residency interviews.
Thank you for that. I know a lot of times people um, are nervous about talking about their failures. Of course, residency programs can see whatever is on your transcript or whatever you so choose to put in your application. But, sometimes we're a little bit nervous to talk about it for whatever reason and whatever that failure or setback looks like. But um, it's good to know that one, we're not alone, that you
Yeah.
yourself, as an attending, had a setback in medical school and you are successful and you are where you are now because you weren't afraid to talk about it and because you kind of like you said you addressed it head on and were open and honest about it and you ended it by what you did to improve and change the circumstance. So it's very, very good to hear and very refreshing as well, so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
The next question I have for you is sometimes residency programs ask very tricky questions, questions that you're not necessarily prepared for, not necessarily um, thinking that you'd be asked, such as, for example, if you could be a fruit, what would you be?
Oh, yeah.
So, how do you navigate or approach those tricky or unexpected questions?
Yeah, so I'm actually guilty of this myself. I have a question I throw out there that's like completely not related to whatever. Man, I feel like that just comes down to once again like confidence. You know who you are better than anybody else. Somebody throws out, if you could pick one thing to eat for the rest of your life, what would you pick? Like for the most part, they don't care what you say, unless you say something weird like Brussels sprouts, or you try to say like, "Oh, I want to eat I don't know, something I want to eat kale salad because it's really healthy and I want to be healthy for myself and my patients and my family." Like that's BS. Like whatever you're going to say, like just be confident in you saying it. Like if somebody brought up the fruit thing to me, I don't know, you could say something as simple as I see myself as a grape because I'm sweet and I am a part of a team. We're all interconnected, and we look and work well together. That's my like goal. I don't know, something like that. Or you could say like I like an apple because I like apples. Like you just have to be confident in what you're saying. You don't want to stumble and overthink because oh, well, I want to be a banana because I got to peel back the layer. Like no, just pick something, first thing that pops in your mind, say it with confidence, stay a little bit extra on how it actually applies to you, keep it moving. Same thing with, favorite movie, favorite book, favorite blah blah blah. Like I'm sure all of y'all have a favorite movie, book, whatever, fill in the blank. Like just say it, you know, and then talk about it. Don't try to don't try to answer what you think they want to hear,
Mhm.
is what I would say.
Confidence is key. I love that. So it's good to know that they don't necessarily care about your answer, but just more so kind of want to hear what you're thinking, how you're thinking, and how you present yourself.
Yeah. I would say for the most part, I'm sure there are some people who are going to interview you and they're going to really look down on you if you're like, you pick a peach instead of a apricot. But for the most part, yeah, I feel like people don't care. One of the answers I gave to like, what's your favorite movie and why was Black Panther. And I was not talking to somebody who probably would agree with me that it's their favorite movie. Um, but I gave them an answer that I felt like was true to myself and kept it moving. So,
Mhm. That's awesome. And so, with questions like those, questions that are unexpected, or even if you did expect it, and maybe you didn't answer the way you wanted to, or didn't respond as confidently or composed as you had intended to, how do you handle those moments? And what do you do to ensure that that doesn't happen again?
um, I think it goes back to taking that little pause before you answer.
Mhm.
That's just enough time to hopefully clear your head, get you focused in on what you want to answer, what you think you're how you're going to answer it, and then you just kind of go for it. I definitely would say I personally wouldn't look down on an applicant if there was a question that came up that was kind of out of nowhere, really caught them by surprise. They gave an answer. I can see that they're not happy with it. They're feeling, they're also probably feeling like they're not happy with it. I think it's more than reasonable to, address it while you're still talking to them, saying like, I know I said this about my favorite fruit, but I've been thinking about it a little bit more while we've been talking, and I think actually, my fruit of choice would be this, or I mean, and leave it at that. That's once again giving out a lot of positive adjectives, I would personally say.
Mhm.
Um, Especially because you're reflecting in the moment of the interview. So not only are you hopefully continuing to give otherwise really good answers that are thorough and thoughtful, but you're also taking that time to acknowledge that you made a mistake or that your answer wasn't up to the standard that you feel comfortable giving. You bring attention to it and then you give whatever better answer that you feel more comfortable with.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there's a lot of positives you can do out of that, out of, being confident and saying, like, hey, I messed up, but this is what I think.
Definitely. Thank you. And so, given that majority of interviews are virtual, although some programs are kind of transitioning back to the in-person style, what are some do's and don'ts specifically to virtual interviews? If you've ever had any virtual interviews, or if you have either as an interviewee or interviewer or mentored people who have gone through these virtual interviews, what are some do's and don'ts?
Yeah. So yeah, my for residency for me, it was all in person. For being a chief and doing my fellowship interviews and helping with interviews now, they're mostly all virtual. So do's and don'ts. I would personally say don't do the whole dress professional from the waist up and not from the waist down. I've heard people do that. I would just say don't do it. That's bold. 'Cause you might have to stand up during your thing for whatever reason. So just, wear the full attire. You don't have to maybe put shoes on if you want to be comfortable, but um, you want to make sure that you seem like you picked a place for the interview that you care about. So you don't, I mean, you obviously don't want to take it in like a Starbucks or take it in a lobby of your auditorium or whatever the case may be. You want to have a place that you feel good about the lighting, feel good about where the sound is, potentially have a friend of yours like FaceTime or Zoom you to make sure that it looks good and feels good from both ends. Do not do a call on your phone or an interview on your phone unless it's like a backup. So make sure you have your laptop, computer charged, ready, everything like that. Please do not show up late unless you have a valid reason. Um, Log in, turn off your camera if you still got a couple things you need to do, but like make sure you're there on time. And then follow the instructions. That's like, there's been a couple people, uh, I don't remember specifically, but they did not follow the instructions, whether it would be entering into a breakout room or an interview room early, leaving too quickly, um, jumping into the wrong room, just all types of little things. Asking questions that were already like addressed in like the introduction PowerPoint, not from like a frame. Sorry if you hear my daughter yelling. Not from a frame of reference of can I get more clarification, but a frame of reference of like I've I didn't know that y'all had an ER. Can you tell me more about that ER? Like, pay attention. Take notes, um, and then know who you're actually being interviewed by.
Mhm.
So most programs do a pretty good job of supplying you with the information of the time and the name of the person. Usually they'll give the contact information afterwards. Make sure you don't call Dr. A Dr. B, and make sure you don't call Dr. B Dr. F. Make sure you get their titles correct, you get what their interests are correct. Um, if somebody's really during the presentation, or you say you're really interested in sports medicine, and then you're talking to a faculty member who you think does sports medicine, but the presentation showed that they do OB, that's going to be a very awkward conversation when you're asking questions about that. Um, I would say try to have a question for everyone who interviews you. Um, so once again, even if let's say you don't like kids, and for whatever reason you're interviewing in a med peds residency, even though you're like, I really just want to do the internal medicine part, like you want to make sure you have a thoughtful question about the program related to children,
Mhm.
or you want to have a thoughtful question about the number of home visits, or inpatient interactions, or grand rounds you have to give. You want to have some type of question that's tailored to different people.
Mhm. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's most of what I was
Mhm.
saying.
Okay. And someone in the audience wants to know if we are allowed to take notes during interviews.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
um I would say I'm maybe a little bit more on the old school side. I wouldn't like pull your phone out and be like typing in the notes on your phone app, um because just like if you pull your phone out when you're working during your third year with a preceptor or shadowing, the initial assumption is you're like not focusing on what's happening. So
Right.
like, please have a paper and pen. Have a paper and pen with those questions that you've written, hopefully ahead of time, or at least like the general concepts. Maybe have an area where you wrote some of the notes of things you want to like ask about or make sure you mention when you're talking to this person or that person. Yeah, but looking to the side of your computer and looking like you're writing versus like looking down in your lap, or holding a phone up, or typing on another computer, those would be no nos.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. That's very helpful. So now we've talked about kind of the, the pre-interview process, during the interview. Now let's talk about after the interview. So, what is your opinion on post-interview thank you notes or follow-ups? Is it worth it? Is it necessary? Is it not necessary?
I would say it depends on how you feel like you did and who you are as a person. I sent a thank you email to everyone that I interviewed with. Um, and those that I really felt like I had a good conversation with, or I made a good connection with, I would send them like a personal email as long as I had their information.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think it's necessary on the side of being an interviewer, but on the side of being an interviewee, I thought that it really just kind of closed the door on that interaction with that program, like
Mhm.
appropriately and professionally. Um, I applied to them, they looked at my information, they saw me, they wanted to talk to me. Now we're on equal footing. You're trying to figure out if they fit you, they're trying to figure out if you fit them. They're done. What's the harm in sending an easy thank you email? You don't have to. send a paragraph, but even just something quick like, I really enjoyed talking, hey, Dr. F, I really enjoyed talking, or I really enjoyed our conversation about um, the community outreach program. I hope that if, we cross paths again in the future, that's something that we can have more discussion about, or I can get more involved in that in the future. Once again, it's like you're even tying like your thank yous to things that mean something to you, that
Mhm.
grabbed your attention, and then also show that you were paying attention.
Right.
Um, I think it's a really easy thing to do. Um, like I said, from the interviewer side, if somebody sends me a thank you, I'm like, that's cool, but it's not gonna make me like get take you from the bottom to the top or anything like
Sure.
that. But I think for me, as a person who has interviewed a lot in the past, it gave me peace of mind knowing that, I gave that last little bit of thank you. I was paying attention to what you were talking about, or, the goals that you want in your program, the type of applicants you're looking for, and once again, how I can fit into that.
Mhm.
Hope you have a good one. There's places that I interviewed at for fellowship that I obviously did not match at. I sent thank you letter or emails to them, and I'm working at a different fellowship program and residency than the one I like went to.
Mhm.
And I think some of that is just by the connections and that, thank you kind of thing.
Mhm.
Just polite, probably what your mom or dad or grandparents would expect out of you too. So just do
Definitely.
it. Yeah.
Definitely. And how do you think applicants can reflect productively on each interview without overanalyzing? So maybe if you can speak on your experience as to how you reflected after each interview, whether that be for residency or for like fellowship, for example.
Yeah, I would say that I would try to keep it very factual. Um, you're gonna get the same basic interview multiple times during the interview
Mhm.
trail. It's, a yes or no, do I feel like I presented myself well? Yes or no, do I feel like I was asking relevant questions? Yes or no, when they brought up a weakness, do I feel like I answered it adequately? If they brought up a strength, same thing. Do I feel like I really got across that I want to both be like a resident, but also I'm interested in these other things? Like, yes. So you're very much like, it's just kind of like a yes or no. And if you have a lot of yeses or more yeses than nos, you did a good job. You
Mhm.
don't need to try to think like, oh, did that person like me? I stumbled with that one answer and I never went back and addressed it. Like, is that gonna dock points? Like, you don't know. So just don't think about it. Just think about the pure like facts. Like, did I hit the goals that I wanted to hit to present the best version of myself I can? Yes or
Mhm.
no? And hopefully, they're all yeses, and then you have your own notes from it, and then you can just keep it moving.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you for that. And we are slowly approaching on time. So I just want to ask you maybe two or three more questions and then we can
Yeah.
wrap up. So, one question I have for you is the interview trail can be very long and be very tiring. And so, how do you stay grounded and motivated through either the ups or the downs of the interview season?
I'll say know why. Just try to keep in mind like why you're doing it.
Hmm.
Um, Same way you got through medical school, and the same way you're going to get through residency, whenever other training. Like, keep in mind the why. Whether it be you want to, give someone else a different experience that than you received when you were in that situation, or you want to provide quality care, or even maybe if you're just a person like, I want to make money and this is a good way for me to make some money. Like, keep that in mind. Like, whatever your motivation is and whatever makes you feel like you're working toward a goal, yeah, just reflect on that.
Mhm.
Keep in mind, if you have family or loved ones, that you're doing it for them. You can put your best foot forward for 4 hours, and then you can be tired after, or you can even make a joke if you are feeling tired or worn out during an interview. If you tie it once again into like confidence or an experience,
Mhm.
um, you're human. Like the interviewers are also human. Like you're not going to be Superman or Superwoman. Just keep in mind while you're doing it,
Mhm.
get it done. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And if you could give one do and one don't to every future applicant, what would they be?
I would say do pay attention to other things in the community outside of the residency program you're interested in.
Mm,
Like if you like shopping at Target, you want to make sure there's a Target. If you like access to fresh produce from a farmer's market, you want to make sure that that is an opportunity. If you like Chipotle and they don't have a Chipotle, or whatever, like those little things matter because, like I said before, you're going to be there for 3 to 7 years minimum. So you want to make sure you're at least happy while you're doing it. That would be a
mhm.
do. I don't. Hmm, what is a big no-no in interviews? I would probably say like don't lie, and that means like
Okay.
don't put anything in your application or your CV, or talk about something that you're not familiar with or comfortable with.
Mm,
If you put that research paper about cortisol that you did your sophomore year of college on your application, you can assume that there's going to be potentially a faculty member who they have their PhD in cortisol and they're really interested in knowing what you did. So you need to be able to say what you did, and
mhm.
hopefully you didn't lie about it. Um, Same thing if you put like for your hobbies. I like to run 5Ks. If you don't like running and you put that on your application, you're crazy, because I guarantee you there's going to be somebody who interviews you who is a avid 5K, half marathon, marathon runner, and they're going to ask you like what your favorite shoes are, if there's an app that you
Mm,
like to use, something that's just like very natural and a part of that little world that you would know if you were a part of it. But if you don't know, it's like a very clear, like, you're putting it on there because it looks good. You don't know actually
right.
why you did it. So just be prepared to, well, don't lie, and be able to like speak on things that are in your application. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think it's obviously something growing up, parents always say, yeah, don't lie. But, sometimes you want to come across as impressive or um, kind of being a part of like niche communities. But like you said,
Mhm.
you have to be able to, speak on it and be able to engage in conversation about it, especially if you come across someone who is also a part of that niche community and is excited
Yeah.
about it. So
Yeah. And
thank you for
that will definitely happen. So
that.
you'll be surprised. Definitely surprised. I've had some people. So I built a computer in medical school when it was COVID time because I didn't have anything else to do. And that I put that in my application, and I think it came up maybe at least a few times, like that I enjoy like computers or building stuff or whatever. And I can joke and laugh during that interview and say, I didn't know what I was doing. I followed a bunch of YouTube videos. Ha ha ha. That's another thing to be completely like a fish out of water.
Mhm,
So just be prepared.
definitely. And our final question for the night is, do you have any final encouragement, specifically for students who might be anxious or doubting themselves in this interview process?
Uh, Probably just the good old. explanation of, you know, no matter what your performance is or was in medical school, as long as you're obviously, you want to do the best, perform to the best of your ability, but it doesn't matter if you're number one, number 10, or number 150 in your class. Like, once you graduate, if you put in the work, you're going to be called a doctor. Um, and I can guarantee that on the other side of things, I don't have patients ask me, were you in the top 10th, like 10th percentile of your class for biochemistry? Because if you're not, I'm not going to see you, like, you know, make the steps, the big steps. Once you get into
Mhm.
medical school, cool, I'm in. Now I just got to take care of work.
Mhm.
Once you are getting toward the end, I'm a doctor. Like, it doesn't matter what trials, tribulations, shortcomings I had. Like, I made it to the end.
Right.
I'm a family medicine resident. Like, doesn't matter that I, stumbled or failed this or didn't perform well on that. Like, give yourself the opportunity to focus on like that accomplishment that you had instead of trying to find little ways to like poke holes in it. I still struggle with that myself, so it's definitely like a human thing, but like just
Mhm.
try to keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's definitely great advice, especially for people who struggle with imposter syndrome and feeling like they don't belong, even though they've put in the work just like everyone else. Still, some way, somehow, those feelings of self doubt creep in. So, thank you for sharing that. Um,
Absolutely.
and with that, I think we are out of time. So, Dr. Nelson, thank you so much for your words of wisdom, for taking the time out of your busy schedule, I'm sure, to come and speak to us about what to do and what not to do in residency interviews.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Good luck to everybody on here.
Thank you, and thank you to our audience. We'll see you next time.